Well, for those of you watching this video on the date it comes out, which is July the 19th, I can say Happy Freedom Day, because July the 19th was the day, in the UK at least, where all the COVID restrictions, or most of the COVID restrictions at least, were relaxed. And it really is a first opportunity we can really get to sort of understand what the new normal is going to mean in practice in terms of work. This is an issue that obviously John has been very interested in, because as far as the creative industry is concerned, the pandemic has had a massive impact on us. And when, back in March, when the restrictions were first imposed, many in the industry were absolutely horrified at the very thought of being forced to work remotely, because they felt that without the day-to-day in-person interactions, their work, their creativity would be seriously undermined. But it's fair to say since then the picture has sort of changed slightly, as many have discovered actually it's maybe not quite as bad as they thought. In fact, it may have actually been an improvement on what went before. Well, to try and understand what was going on during the pandemic, the Drum joined forces with our friends at Adobe to produce a report to try and understand the impact the pandemic had on creative working and what the implications were for the future. We interviewed about 100 creatives through an online questionnaire. We pulled together a focus group of leading creative managers as well, and we put this together into a report, which I'm pleased to say is being published today. Now, to discuss that report and discuss what the new normal might mean, to discuss their views on Freedom Day, I'm joined by an amazing panel, and that panel includes Richard West, who is the Senior Manager of Strategic Development at Adobe. Welcome to him. Yui Aghedo, who is Creative Director at Trapart. Alice Wall, who is Graphic Designer at Innocent. And Jennifer Hayesha, who is Associate Design Director at We Are Social. And not only that, we're also joined by the Drum's very own Jenny Baker, who is the editor of our report into the future of creative working. And Jenny, I should maybe come to you first so you can put all this in context for us and give us insights into what the key findings were.
Yeah, of course. So the report essentially looks at the impact of working from home through the lens of creativity, collaboration, and culture. You know, it showed that working from home has been a positive experience for most marketers, with things like greater flexibility, more time with families, and it was only fewer than 1 in 5 who admitted to struggling to work effectively. 56% of all respondents expect to continue to work mostly from home in the future, and that actually rises to 2/3 of creatives. But where we sort of saw a division was in the quality of creative work produced during lockdown. So almost half agreed the quality of work had improved, but the same amount disagreed with that statement. 74% said their company's creative output hadn't suffered, but 37% felt the same about the quality of work across the industry. Technology was found to be most effective in the latter stages of the creative process. And more than half acknowledged that working from home had made collaboration harder.
It's actually really interesting, particularly that so many people felt the quality of work was actually improving. But Alice, what was your experiences at Innocent?
So I think once we got over the initial shock of having to adapt to working remotely, it's been really positive. Like you were just saying there, in terms of flexibility, that's like amazing for everybody to be able to have a bit more flexibility and like work when it suits you. Getting a bit more headspace is quite good for creatives. So when you're in the office and there's a lot going on and you're being pulled into a lot of meetings, you can struggle sometimes to get that headspace. So that's been a real positive.
Yeah, and obviously you're in an interesting position at Innocent because you're very much on client side. Yui at Trapart, you're sort of in between. You create a lot of your own work, but you also work for clients. But what sort of, do you agree that the standard of creativity did improve, or?
I feel like I went through phases. So there was a time where it did improve. So in terms of working with other people and learning how to work with other people and adapt, I feel like I was really improving in that sense. Also in terms of just research and kind of learning more about the craft that you're actually doing, I feel like maybe the output didn't increase, but it allowed me to improve my quality along the line.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely does. And Jennifer, is that your sort of experience as well?
I'd say similarly, yes. I would say our output is we've got more of an output now because it's more efficient to kind of work at home, and you can block out time to do things. And again, you don't have those distractions, that you don't get pulled into random meetings. I would say brainstorms and stuff, not so much, but when you actually look at the quality of work and the output, I would say that we're doing more than what we were doing pre-pandemic. And also with creativity, you can schedule it. If dancing helps you with your creativity, go for a wee dance class, come back, and away you go, attack that brief. So you can look at it differently than if you were stuck to your office.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think that creative people, it's not a linear thing, isn't it? You're not buying 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
You're usually buying a result.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think that sort of variety could be the reason that maybe the creative output has improved for some, or the quality has improved for some?
Yeah, exactly that. Because if you think about it, we're creative people. You usually get your creative ideas in the shower, and I've been doing roller skating. So when I'm roller skating, I'm thinking of other things, and it's like, oh, actually, we could do that for this client, or this could work. And because I've got that freedom, rather than being like trapped on my commute, and my commute, I would come up with ideas as well. But now I've got different inspirations during the day that I didn't have before, which has been mind-blowing and fun.
And Richard, you're obviously in a fascinating position to monitor all this, because Adobe, you're working with hundreds, thousands of companies. So you must have really good insights into how maybe workflows have started to adapt. Have you seen any sort of big trends?
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of picked up on it in your report as well yourselves, in as much as we moved to the cloud, I don't know, decades ago now. So we kind of were ready for this sort of situation. Not that we obviously ever would have imagined something like this would have happened. But for us, therefore, we had that infrastructure built into our Creative Cloud backbone that meant that, okay, we were ready with things like Creative Cloud Libraries, which is the shared collaborative environment. And that meant that, great, as soon as this kicked in, people could move to that. And from our perspective, it actually meant that whereas for the last, I don't know, quite a few years, myself and my teams go out there and we talk to our customers and we get that feedback, and we ask them about how they work. And in the past, things like libraries were sort of overlooked. It was something that was quite nice. A niche few would be using it. We've now seen that major move to it. So we've now seen people saying, okay, great, actually, we've got an alternative. We will be using this collaborative form of sharing. We'll be using, things like the whiteboard feature in our XD apps. That's sort of the whole build-up of our collaborative applications, and the integration between them has really come to the fore during lockdown. It's really meant that people have been able to use the technology we built a lot more effectively than they have done in the past. I think your survey said something like 83% of people were using Creative Cloud Libraries, out of the creatives anyway. And we're also seeing that with marketeers as well. So I know your report looked at both two sides, if you like, of the creative environment. So one being creative designers and one being the marketeers. I think we saw the creatives necessarily found more use out of the integration between applications, the shared storage, that capability to collaborate. Marketeers, we could certainly see that they were just getting to it now, and they're getting more out of it now. So as the last 18 months has ticked on, we've seen them actually get a lot more involved. And I think, again, the report fed back the fact that marketers were seeing better interaction with their clients and with the creative teams as well. So that was good, I think, and it's all been born out of the underpinnings that we've got in our technology and other technologies that really helped us. So yeah, it's been interesting to watch.
Because you've touched on the issue of collaboration, which is probably the naughtiest challenge about this whole working arrangement. Before getting into that in more detail, it has to be said that this whole thing seems much more logical way of working, doesn't it? Yeah. No, the whole idea of people sort of jumping on the tube or commuting, travel to an office to do the work, suddenly we're in it just seems a much more logical place to be, really. But do you sort of share my optimism that actually, I actually think this has fundamentally been a positive, experience for our industry?
So I'm a designer. That's my background. So I literally started on Adobe and went from Photoshop to Lightroom to After Effects, the lot. And what I've noticed is that when I am working with people, and this is with team and with clients, maybe they've had a bit more time to kind of explore how to use these products, and it kind of makes it much easier for me because now we're meeting more like halfway, and then the sharing, being able to share your work sometimes. So I can't actually draw like fine art, right? But just in January 2020, we got some tablets for Trap Art, and we kind of started going into digital art. So it's so amazing how we can draw something, or my partner can draw something while he's on the train or while he's on the bus or wherever, and literally instantly upload it onto my screen at home, where I can then take it and start animating it. And it just makes the process so much easier. That's been like a proper like breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Have you seen it happen a lot, Richard? Because I imagine what the pandemic has done is forced a lot of people to really get much more actually, and actually maybe go to these bits, these applications on their various SaaS packages they've never really looked at before, and sort of really started using them. So do you think people are using much more of the functionality, systems like Adobe offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing. I think one of your interviewees in the report said that there's nothing to substitute a pen and paper, but as you just said, we're actually getting a lot of people using things like Fresco, which is our sketching or drawing application on tablets to actually mock ideas up. You can take that, you can then, for instance, drop it onto Adobe Stock, where we've got the visual search functionality, and that visual search functionality runs away. It's got artificial intelligence underneath it, and it can say, all right, okay, you've done this rough sketch. Let's find something that is a finished product that can substitute that. So this whole integration between all these different applications has been certainly we've had some great feedback across the board with what's going on. So yeah, it's been really good to see it being used.
But one of that's all very positive. In fact, and before we move on from the positive side of this conversation, Alice, do you subscribe to the fact actually the larger the experiences here have been quite beneficial, or do you disagree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have been using technology so differently since the pandemic, and we've put a lot more of a focus on getting the value out of it. And I think because everybody's kind of got to find solutions. I think before, where it was easy just to kind of dismiss stuff because it maybe took a bit of time to work out or to get everybody on board with it, this has kind of forced everybody to properly look at where the value lies with different technology and what amazing tools we have at our disposal for design, but also just for communication. I definitely think for us, one really good thing actually has been, because we're have global offices. Before, there definitely felt like a bit of a divide between the different offices, and it felt like, I don't know, a big deal to go to the place, to go and have meetings with people, or to getting people on the phone. We weren't very used to it, I think. And now those barriers have just completely been broken down, and that's been a huge step forward for us. So if we're speaking to clients in France, or copywriters or whatever in France, it doesn't feel any different to speaking to people in the UK. And actually now everyone's dispersed all over the place anyway, so you don't know where people are half the time. It's kind of made everything feel a lot closer, and really improve communication for us, for sure.
So We Are Social have loads of global offices, and we actually had a global conference where we actually had little Sims avatars, and we actually interacted from home and had a massive conference where we were in this kind of virtual world. And it kind of felt during the pandemic, one of the good things about that is that all the global offices are a bit more tight, and we can communicate more. And we were literally running about in Sims avatars, watching all these incredible shows and talks and from our CEO and everything. And we wouldn't have got that if we weren't all at home. You would have had half the people in the office and maybe some people dialing in, but that collaboration for cross office is we felt that as well. It was really cool. It was very, very cool. Yeah.
And I suppose that you mentioned the word collaboration, which is good. It's a good segue into the issue of collaboration, because that has been one of the biggest challenges for people, isn't it? In terms of they get more time to think, more time for ideas, but actually it's been harder to then sort of form relationships with their colleagues, particularly new colleagues actually, and also maintain relationships with the clients. So, I don't know who wants to go first, but maybe since you raised it, Jennifer, about collaboration, you know, that's a really good example. Have you avatars to bring the team together? But is there any other examples of how you've dealt with this issue of collaboration?
I think collaboration has been quite difficult. I feel like collaboration with the client has been amazing because you can just jump on a call and be like, hey, do you want to just talk over this one point? Or we'll show you this deck virtually, and it's easy to jump on a call with a client, and that's kind of more accessible. But when it comes to the team, we onboarded a lot of people this pandemic, and having to make sure that they're included and like collaborate in that way, you do get those rough kind of blocks, and you can't really get through to people as easily as you could if you were in an office. However, if you've got people that are quite introverted and maybe you wouldn't speak to them in the office anyway, it feels like you can collaborate with them a bit easier by like sending messages. Some people don't like being talked to constantly. So when you collaborate, maybe actually a chat or like like Slack or workplace chat is actually much more beneficial to them, and then we can ping things back and forth, and it feels a bit more interactive than it would before, which is you got your 10 minutes briefing, you go through everything, then off you go, do your thing, we'll check in later. It feels like it's an ongoing conversation, so I feel like collaboration never ends. It's from start, like day till night, you're always collaborating with somebody, you're chatting to somebody, you're jumping on calls. I feel like a bit more accessible. I'm more accessible and they're more accessible, and it's just nicer in a way, but I do miss a good brainstorm.
And you, because obviously the other side of the equation is the clients as well.
With us, we like to collaborate mostly with other creators. We set a lot of open briefs, and that's just kind of the way that we do it. I think our environment is totally different. It's much more relaxed, much less formal, more informal. And so with us setting open briefs, I feel like maybe even going forward, we should see a lot more of this, because I think when you're going with what you wanted to do, and maybe it's an idea that you've had and that you've wanted to develop, it allows you to really be a part of it, in the sense that this is something that we've all wanted to do together. We're collaborating with people that we've not met before, but maybe they haven't had a chance to get in contact with someone that is providing these type of opportunities. And so for us, it's like, yeah, open briefs all day long. Whoever wants to come and help out, come and help out. And that's kind of how we kind of battled. I mean, we can't go out, but I mean, if we can still find a way to bring people in and keep other people around us, because it's just as important to stay creatively active yourself, but we also try and maintain our bubble as well and keep our bubble active, because it's where we get our inspiration from. It's where we kind of thrive from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, yeah. Yeah, I suppose, Alice, you're in a slightly different position, being, working in an organisation, Innocent, where you're an internal client, really, or your client is just the company. But I'd imagine one of the biggest challenges you have in terms of collaboration, even on a day-to-day basis, is how to keep the whole company aligned behind your sort of, your brand positioning. If you're launching new products, you're evolving brands, how do you actually keep everyone using basically using the right stuff at the right time?
Yeah, I think so. I think just keeping everybody informed. I think the thing for us has been like actually probably putting in quite a lot of more planning in terms of our communication. I think before the pandemic, we kind of like had a very casual style of communication, and you just pop over to someone's desk to speak to them. Meetings were really informal, and I think we've had to accept actually we've needed to make that a bit more formal and a bit more structured to actually make it work properly. And I guess one thing that's quite challenging as well is like just making people feel present in the room, because there's so much distractions, and if people don't have cameras on, when you're sort of trying to get across creative ideas where you want people to be really engaged and excited, it's quite difficult to get everybody really in the room. So I think we've done quite a lot around that. Just like, I mean, a lot of people hate them, but doing like icebreakers and stuff actually really help. So within our team, we always do like random icebreakers, little bits of inspiration at the beginning of meetings, like really random stuff. It could be anything, just getting everybody involved. And trying to bring people into the room. And I think as well, like we mentioned that, I think Jennifer mentioned about like introverts and extroverts. And that's like quite a difficult thing as well, doing stuff remotely. I guess in some ways it opens things up a bit for introverts, but certainly when you've got a lot of people on a call and you want people to, you know, give their ideas and give their input. If they're quite introverted, it's quite intimidating, I think, on screen. So we've really tried to have a look at how we kind of involve everybody, open that up, like whether it's on chat or whether people are putting something on the whiteboard during the discussion, or if they send something afterwards, or whatever that might be. But yeah, just kind of being a bit more structured and prepared has kind of paid off.
Yeah. Do you find also that it affected how you pitch? Because normally, because I've noticed this actually myself, if you, even internally, if you pitch something that's a bit half-baked, so you can get away with that in person because you can read the room. So you know to adapt and you bob and weave a bit. But over, you know, doing that remotely, you can get something to, it could be a real problem because of something's a bit introverted. They're not going to challenge it right away, so suddenly the, you know, the idea doesn't fly. I mean, so have you found that actually how you do a creative pitch has evolved during the period?
Yeah, definitely. So when we pitch for client work or we're pitching ideas to clients, it has to be watertight. Like we have to interrogate the brief and the pitch and make sure it's like everything is, there's no winging it. It's like what you see is what you get. If we've messed up, we've messed up, and they're going to see it straight away, and you can't bluff over it or say, how's your day, that kind of thing. So I feel like you just have to be spot on with every pitch. But it also means that you can access clients that you never thought you can access before, because the traditional agency was like, you go in, you do your suits on, you fancy this, you fancy that, your briefcase, you go in, show them all the goods and like do the magic show. There is no magic show. It's literally the creative sells itself. And if you don't do it, you're going to get in trouble. And I kind of like that.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point, actually. There's much more emphasis on the work rather than this. Those expressions, there's more emphasis on the sausage rather than the sizzle.
Yeah, completely. I love it. That's the best part, is the creative. And I think, yeah, that's been a good thing.
Yeah.
I think I would describe myself as maybe a bit of an introvert. And for me, I think going into pitches, I always just try and get everything done as much as possible. And especially like during the beginning of the pandemic, when it came to like advertising, marketing, I would literally just do out a whole campaign exactly like how I would imagine it. And if you have some adjustments, and that's kind of how I kind of went about it.
Obviously, Richard, again, you must have a lot of interesting insights about the collaboration, because in terms of collaborating with the clients and keeping them up to speed, that is really, you know, a big part of what you do, isn't it, in terms of what your systems do?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think, you know, as everybody said, you know, you've got this democratization that's going on in the pitching process. But, you know, the technology that's sitting around the back of it from a Creative Cloud perspective means that, okay, we can get that pitch over much more quickly, much more succinctly. People can be collaborative even during the process of, okay, if they want to choose some elements of stock, for instance, they can go into Adobe Stock, they can actually choose it at the client end, and that can be populated into a library that the agency or the design team can then work on. So there's very much more interaction based on that. But you know, it's not down to geography; it's down to the skill of what's going into the work now and the actual quality of the work that's coming out. So I think that's been great to see. And I think, you know, as your report said, I think it's, and as Yui said, effectively, it's actually released a lot of potential for a lot of people who wouldn't otherwise be getting under that spotlight. And just from the point of view of, I think the report mentioned about not feeling like you've got somebody looking over your shoulder. It's a really good thing. I think that really sort of means that you don't have that, as a designer, you don't have that constant concern that everything you're thinking about is being examined straight away. You've got time to think about it, got time to put a proper thought behind it, and then you can pitch it. So I think that's been a really good thing from lockdown, basically.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about the report was it dealt with very much, I suppose, what's now the past, really. And people in the past were trying to speculate what's going to happen in the future. But we find ourselves in this very interesting bit at the moment. We're sort of in the middle. Now we're in the present, and the present turns out that there's this transition going on where people are going from the sort of extreme lockdown to more of a hybrid model. But there's dangers in that sort of transition as well, isn't it, as everyone adapts? And I think, you know, you've got strong views on that, Alice, in terms of, that mix between people working either remotely or going back to the office.
Yeah, I'm going to be so interested to see what we do with this going forward. I think it's going to be the same for everybody. It's just going to be a challenge because, yeah, as we were saying before, everything works perfectly when you're all in a room together. Everything works perfectly when everybody's dialing in. But when you kind of have that hybrid approach of some people are in the room, some people are dialing in, making everybody involved and the technology working smoothly, and yeah, I think just feeling like you're all kind of like one unit becomes like a lot more difficult. So I'm going to be interested to see how we manage that going forward.
Yeah, it starts off with you know, things like this little sort of video we're doing at the moment, isn't it? Sort of hybrid here, where we've got people live in the studio, got people in Zoom, and there's interesting technical challenges with that as well. It just you know, and you can sort of then roll that out across the creative industries as a whole. But what are your views, Jennifer? It's going to be interesting over the next few months, isn't it? As people adapt.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, but it's an exciting challenge to have, because like you can have people in the office and then they're going to bond, but then you also have people behind the scenes, like it's like back in the day, MSN Messenger, AIM, and like, you know, you're chatting to your pals online when we were a wee kid. It's like that kind of vibe again, and we went back to teenagers and we're kind of like chatting to each other on Messenger, and I kind of like that dynamic, because if you want to meet people, you can come into the office and meet the people that you work with, but if you want to just stay home and get your headspace and like focus on you, I feel a bit healthier because I can have that balance, whereas before it was like Monday to Friday. I don't know how I do a Monday to Friday now, honestly. It's like I need my yoga in the morning and I need my cup of tea that I make at home. So I think it's interesting, and I just think we just need to be open for the future and what that means. And I think it's great.
Yeah. What do you think? This is going to be a bit of a new experience, the hybrid?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, just before in January 2020, we had set ourselves a brief of basically how would we present our work if there was no internet. And so I think as a creative, we're constantly looking for these, how can I say, these alternate worlds that we can either create or adjust. So I think for me, like it's something that I look forward to because it just allows me to do more. It's giving me something to do. Yeah, I think going forward, once things start opening back up, I think we're going to see a lot more. I think it's going to be very exciting because I feel like people are going to come back with a lot of new energy and a lot of new knowledge. Like, so I'm super excited about it, I'll be honest. I'll be super honest.
No internet, that's unthinkable.
Yeah, but if you know, even like we were talking about like things like flash mobs and things like that, and how can we bring this back to where it's not so cheesy? And then we have things like people running through Tesco's and it's like, oh, well, there we go. That's like, you know, kind of like the lines that we're thinking. I think creatives are always looking to push boundaries, and we're never really comfortable. You know, we do something and we're like, oh, that was so great. But if only I did this and you know, so I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Well, we should collaborate within that because we love to do a magazine using no electricity.
Look at that, yeah. So we can always move forward with that.
Even more extreme.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But Richard, what's your view on how, you know, the industry is going to sort of move through this sort of transitional phase? You can imagine the hybrid model when it's settled in is going to be fine, but there's going to be an adjustment in the short term as well.
I mean, as I say, we're already seeing a lot of people using our cloud-based technologies from our perspective very much more than they were before, you know, much more virtual and remote collaboration basis. I think it's had an impact on the quality of the work, though. You know, I think that's the key thing that we've seen. This time, well, actually, February last year, I did a session with yourselves at the Drum on our 2020 trends, so the trends that we see, the creative trends that we see out in the industry. And that was interesting because at the time we were just about to go into lockdown. We're just hearing about this virus thing, and we were talking about certain trends that a few weeks later we did a survey, and some of those trends became completely tone deaf, as it were, to the situation that people were in. You know, we were talking about things like the big outdoors, and you couldn't get out there. You couldn't look at that situation because people were very much getting into that. Crikey, I can't go outside for however long. I don't want to see pictures of that. And it's gone full circle. So this year we've just done, we've done our 2021 trends, and we've been following, again, using analytics that we've got built into our technologies and with the companies that we work with to see what's going on. And we get this through things like Behance as well, our sharing collaborative environment. And we see, what people are creating now, what's on vogue, what's on message. And ironically now, great outdoors or that sort of trend, breath of fresh air as we're calling it, is coming in as being very on vogue, because we are all now getting to that point where we're thinking, God, we need to get out of here, or hopefully we're now all able to get out there. So we've changed as far as the actual style of creative that we're seeing. And things like last year, we very much saw the noir styles coming in as being something that were going to be on vogue during 2020 at the start of the year. Strangely enough, this year we're seeing mood boosting colors as being one of those themes that we've got with the 2021 trends. People are wanting to see something happier, a lot more sunny and fun, basically. So it's great that we see that, and it's nice to see through things like Adobe Stock, where we have that forum for people to not only share their work but actually sell their work as well. And that's great, because we're seeing some fantastic quality of content coming through there as well. I think that's again indicative of people being able to give a bit more time to and focus to what they're doing, and think about some of the trends that are going on out there, and be more on message. And that's been really good to see that impact of the style and quality of content that's come through on Adobe Stock. So yeah, it's remarkable what a change 18 months can make, but it's great to see how people have been adapting to it.
That's great. Well, I've got one last question for you. We're almost out of time, and it's a bit of an unfair question because we haven't rehearsed it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. This is obviously come to you on Freedom Day, the birth of a new era. It's almost like New Year. So what is your sort of new era resolution?
I want to keep that balance of like, oh wow, not having to go to everything all the time, and spending time creatively on myself, because before it was like you would go to loads of different events, you'd be shattered, you wouldn't have that time to do things. But now my commuting time I've kind of repurposed into creative development for myself, whether that's yoga or that's drawing or it's watching talks or reading a book or going for a walk or whatever that is. I need to keep that going because that's helped me so much. It's cleared my head and I know what I'm doing. And also travel a bit more in the UK, because like I miss that influence of things, but the places I've been to in the pandemic has kind of widened my eyes a bit more than they usually would. They wouldn't have done that before. And now I'm like, every new kind of experience I have goes straight back into my work, which I like. I'm like, okay, let's keep this going. So yeah, nourish myself. That's it.
Well, thanks for that quite long answer.
Yeah, sorry.
That's giving everyone else a time to think of the
No,
answers.
Yeah, I did think this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep mine brief. Mine for me is to literally just stay present. Stay present of what's going on around us in terms of like, even if it's in the virtual world, stay present because it's not so far disconnected from the real world. Personally, I don't really differentiate the virtual world, real world. It's all the same. But for me, it's to just stay present, kind of like what you said as well. I think we can get really intense in our work sometimes and kind of shut out from everything else. But I feel like a lot of our work comes from outside, and being present in wherever you are, whatever environment you are, it's the best way to solve the problems.
That's great, thanks a lot. Alice?
Yeah, so for me, I think just not taking stuff for granted. Like, I think everything became so small, like our world became so small for so many months. And then now that things are starting to open up again, just like all of a sudden, I appreciate London so much more. Like, I think I definitely did take for granted just like how much you see day to day, just on your commute, just talking to people, and like how much you absorb, that energy you absorb from people when at the weekend they've gone to this new cool restaurant that had like crazy packaging, or they went to an amazing exhibition. So even stuff that you're not doing yourself, just how much you absorb from other people, just not taking that for granted.
Great, agree with that. Richard?
I'm going to sound a bit biased now. I'm going to take this from a technology point of view, but we've put a lot of effort into collaborative stuff, as mentioned. You're using libraries to share stuff, artificial intelligence to speed things up, and I think because time has become so much more compressed in lockdown, and I'm going from one call to another call to another call, and I'm sure everybody else in this session is doing the same thing. I think you need to use the technology to save yourself and buy yourself some time, and get that work-life balance back by using the artificial intelligence that's in Photoshop for doing smart cutouts, or that's in Adobe Stock for finding images or videos that are like ones that you're thinking might work, but you want something slightly different. That sort of implementation of technology, I think it's not just in the Adobe applications, it's across the board. I think in lots of things that we use. I'm sure there's stuff on our phones and so on that we could use more for collaboration, for instance. But I think if we get to use that, if we focus on that, I think taking the time to actually learn a bit as well, invest in ourselves, and actually train up on something new as well. Try and choose a new subject. It's something I'm always getting my teams to do as well, is to look at, okay, you may be focused on this particular area, but look at something new. Look at the latest video creation tools, things like Rush on the tablets, for instance, for video editing. Fantastic tool, very easy to use if you're not a video user. Get in there and use that. Use XD if you're currently bored with using PowerPoint for presentations, things like that. Use XD. It's a collaborative tool. It's a great design tool. It's a superb tool for mocking up things that GUI design for apps and websites. Well, hey, it's also great for presenting. It's also great for sharing information. So yeah, use the technology, I think, is the key thing that I'm taking away from it, both myself and encouraging that for everybody else as well.
No, that's great. It's a very, very, very good point, and a brilliant point to end on as well. I think that's all we've got time for. In fact, I think we've ran slightly over, but I think it's well worthwhile because it's a fascinating conversation. So thanks once again to my amazing panel. And remember, the Adobe and the Drum report is now online. You can download it by following the links on the article associated with this video. And it is a fantastic read, and I hope it'll give you some real insights into how to manage through the transition to this sort of new normal. Thank you very much.